This week's special guests, a pair of Canada's top sports documentary producers, team up for Being Leafs Nation. Dale Morrisey, Paul Patskou, Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show. Coming up!
Well, if you're a Leafs fan or a hockey fan in general, you are not going to want to miss this show. Okay, we have two very special guests for us today. He is an Oshawa native, first of all, graduate of Trent University and Loyalist College, a journalist for CBC and Chorus, documentary filmmaker. He's made historical shorts, full-length features on CBC, PBS, Super Channel, Chorus. His company is wanderingjournalist.com. He's a producer, writer, director for such films as Hockey's Lost Boy, The Father of Hockey, Only the Dead Know the Brooklyn Americans, Heroines in the Storm, Marvelous Marleys, and the soon-to-be-released Being Leafs Nation, a film in 3 periods. Ladies and gentlemen, Dale Morrisey, and also joined by Toronto native, graduate of York University, author, NHL historian and archivist, video librarian, historical consultant for CBC, Sportsnet, Leafs TV, ESPN, a Canadian Screen Award winner for Best Visual Research, the man responsible for the great video we have on the program, co-executive producer of Being Leafs Nation, a film in 3 periods, Paul Patskou. Ladies and gentlemen, guys, welcome to the program. First of all,
that was great. You should
Dale,
just follow me around and say it all the time, just so my kids, think I'm actually important.
Hey, I was impressed by that resume, Dale. Jeez, happy to be working with you.
Both of you guys have pretty impressive resumes, and when you pull out those gems, I mean, there's a lot there to work with. Honestly, guys, it's so good to have you on the show, and Being Leafs Nation, a film in 3 periods. Pretty excited about what's happening. First of all, Dale, and tell us about the film, where you're at in the process.
Well, right now, we just wrapped our crowdfunding campaign, so to get some finishing up money for the film. We have poster art being designed, and it's looking really nice. So we're down the home stretch. Paul and I are going to look over a storyboard for the film and see where there are some gaps maybe to fill. See if we need to reshoot or shoot some additional interview footage to maybe fill in a few gaps. But we're down the home stretch, and by fall, there'll be 3 55-minute periods or episodes telling the story of not just the Leafs, but of the fans who continue to love this team through the ups and many downs of the club's history.
Well, the fall is just in time for the next season, after they celebrate a cup victory finally, right? Paul,
absolutely. That's why we're holding off, so we can write that chapter.
I gotcha. Paul, you are absolutely a walking, talking encyclopedia when it comes to hockey. Some of the projects you worked on besides this one, NHL 100, NHL vignettes for the 100th anniversary celebration, Names in the Cup, 75 Forever, Toronto Maple Leafs 75th anniversary video. Tell us what your thoughts are about Being Leafs Nation and how excited you are about this project.
Oh, very excited because I'm all about the Leafs. And as you mentioned, I worked on the Leafs 75th anniversary video and even appeared in it. And, I always want to do things differently. So this is a chance where Dale and I have control and we can tell a story in a different way and include the fans and use some different images and things. And, there's the Leafs in 1931 playing and Maple Leaf Gardens, and you can tell it's the first year because there's no score clock, and that's all kinds of old images of the Pete Langell scoring. I actually have the video of that, and this is great. This is a home movie, unbelievable stuff you'll be able to see. Of course, there's Mr. Maple Leaf right there, Joe Bowen,
right,
and the funny man.
That's Jim McKinney there, and Steve Lutzik. And so obviously Ludzik never played for the Leafs, but he grew up a huge Leafs fan, and Johnny Bower was his favorite player. And he said in one of the interview clips that we use in the film, he said that he remembers playing against the Leafs in the '80s, and he said that he remembers playing one night in Maple Leaf Gardens where they just destroyed the Leafs. And he said, he can't remember the exact score, but he thinks it was like 8-2 or 7-1 or something. And he said it was not good for the Leafs, but it wasn't good for the NHL at that time. He said, because it was embarrassing. He said he felt embarrassed beating the Leafs that badly. He said, one, because they were his boyhood team, and two, because he said the Leafs had fallen that far at that time. And it wasn't good for the league, and it wasn't good for Toronto, and it wasn't good for the team. And so that's obviously one of the lowlights. But I mean, there's lots of positives too. But those are just some of the memories that he has. And it's funny. He also talks about how important it was to watch Hockey Night in Canada with his dad, and that's something that I think we touch on a lot in the film. Is how being a Leafs fan is something that's passed down from generation to generation. And I think that happens with a lot of teams that have a legacy that stretches back generations.
Well, as somebody who grew up in Western Canada, in Edmonton, I can attest to that. There's been Maple Leaf fans from across the country, and it was passed on to me too. Actually, my brother. But one of the things that happened to me is when the Leafs traded Frank Mahovlich to when he ended up in Montreal, I changed my allegiance for just a little while there, until my Oilers entered the NHL. And of course, coming back to work in Toronto, I became a hardcore Leafs fan again. It was really hard not to. But there, you talk about Ludzik's disappointment, and let's face it, we've all gone through some tough times as Leaf fans. There have been some really tough times in the '80s and maybe the late '70s into the '80s. There were a lot of disappointments. Let's put it that way. And I'm sure the film touches on some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Paul, I think, Paul remembers it more than I do. I was just a little tyke, but I remember, the joy of Lanny McDonald scoring that goal to get them, that much closer to the cup.
It's the
Only
Islanders,
to
yeah.
ultimately the ultimate heartbreak again. And Jim McKinney talks about how good the Leafs could have been in the '70s.
Right.
If Ballard had the money to keep the team together. And, they lost players to the WHA. They lost players to other teams because they just didn't have the money to keep the team together in the '70s. And Paul probably remembers that heartache of watching the team get rebuilt multiple times and only to watch them get dismantled.
Yeah, I go further back. I actually saw the '67 Stanley Cup win, and speaking about early '70s, well, Jim Gregory should get a lot of credit. He rebuilt the team twice. Once after Punch Imlach actually, the team was
Left
going
the first
nowhere.
time.
Yeah,
Right.
and
Yeah.
then WHA came along, and Jim Gregory built that team up again. And it was tough working under Ballard, so he had one hand tied behind his back. He just really couldn't do what he wanted to do. But he was an amazing guy. And then, of course, Punch Imlach came back for the second time, and then everything went downhill after that. But the first time the Leafs went downhill was at the '67 expansion draft. People don't realize that they are handicapped in who they can protect. And that'll be told in the film as well, where that's when the Leafs have never recovered since the expansion draft in '67. That will be explained.
Yeah, it was it's sort
Right.
of a tale of two different teams and two different ownership groups and two different management groups. And you look at Toronto and Montreal and how they did from expansion moving forward. I think, wouldn't you agree, Paul, that Montreal was better set up for dealing with expansion and post-expansion, and Toronto
That's a whole
wasn't.
different story in itself. Where we should do the expansion show, because I don't want to get into too much here, but the rules were sort of, well, let's say it needs some investigation, because the Montreal Canadiens seem to they made, well, Tammy Pollock made the rules, and some were really odd rules when you look at them there, like certain players only being eligible halfway through, and all kinds of deals made, and at least couldn't trade players for draft picks like Sammy Pollock did because they didn't own the players. They sold them to Rochester. There's a whole big story there we can go into. We'll probably touch on it in the film, but that's maybe another film we can do on the Great Expansion in '67 and how the Leafs went down and Montreal kept winning and all the politics that were involved at the time.
Yeah, you know what's funny? I had Scotty Bowman on the show, and he talked about some of that and how the rules did favor the Habs, the way things were set up, and obviously Scotty benefited from that as well. But Sam Pollock had, things were going his way, and that's also touched on in Ken Dryden's book about Scotty as well. But getting back to this film now, like it's funny you mentioned that Jimmy Kennedy talking about how things could have been different, had the Leafs either spent more money or maybe Ballard had a little bit deeper pockets than what he had. But we actually have a clip from McKenney that we pulled from some of the vids that you sent us, Vic.
But all the players jumped over to the WHA because Harold and Stafford didn't have money. They didn't have enough money to pay the players, so we lost guys like Davey Keon, Paul Henderson, Jimmy Harrison, Ricky Lee, Brad Selwood, not to mention Bernie Perrant. I mean, if we would have had those guys, we win.
Tough to argue that, right? Add all those names up, put them on the Leafs teams of the '70s, and it's hard to believe that they wouldn't have won maybe a cup or two, right?
Yeah,
It's a lot of talent.
Paul, you want to speak on that?
Yeah, well, Sittler was young and he was coming on, and they had a great series against the Rangers. And like I said, Jim Gregory built the team. He knew what kind of parts needed, and WJ comes along, and of course, I think Bernie Perrant was the biggest loss there. He wasn't going to stay, and Jim Harrison. The league was going to more aggressive type of play, and you sort of missed people like Jim Harrison and the defense was decimated. And I remember first year after expansion, after the WHA, they finished dead last. They had the worst team ever, and they're using people you never even heard of before. And because they lost half their defense, it just any other city would have really been down on them. But that can happen in Toronto. The fans will still come out. That's a big part of the film where the fans are so loyal to this team, whether they were winning or losing, and it's kind of remarkable. But that started all the way back with Foster Hewitt, back with the radio in the '30s, and we're going to talk about that as well.
Yeah, if you remember that there was a time in the '30s when Foster Hewitt would travel out west with the Leafs, and they would do like a off-season barnstorming sort of thing from town to town on the train, and of course this is radio, so the fans don't really recognize the players from visual cues, but they recognize Foster Hewitt and his voice, and so they would stop in small towns and Foster Hewitt would get mobbed before the players did, and he would get mobbed for autographs and mobbed for questions, and the players would be sort of standing off to the side, wondering what was going on. They would pull into these small towns in the prairies, and Foster Hewitt was the star more than some of the players were.
Yeah.
Everybody listened. Everybody knew Foster's voice for sure.
Yeah, that amused the Leaf players, particularly Red Horner. He just laughed. He said, nobody cared for us, but they all loved Foster. Yeah, because it had that effect on especially during the Depression and during the war years too. We're going to touch on that. We're actually going to have some actual Foster Hewitt play-by-play from the war years against New York Americans, where they put out they're asking for binoculars and support the war effort, and that was huge for morale. And they even recorded the games and sent them overseas to the troops in Europe and fighting, and it was a great morale booster, and there's some great stories from that as well. And we're gonna actually, it was a
way for Canada for them to get a piece of Canada when they were overseas. One of the people we interviewed, the the late hockey historian Bill Fitzel, who died, I guess, about a year ago now, in his 90s, when he passed. He remembers when he was in the Navy that they would gather in the mess and they would listen to these 78s and these acetates being played, and the game would be weeks, sometimes even months old before it got to them, and it didn't matter because no one would know the outcome. And it was just, and they wouldn't even get the entire game. They would just get parts of the game, but it didn't matter. They would listen. They would hear Foster Hewitt's voice, and they would hear the play-by-play of their beloved Toronto Maple Leafs, and they would get a piece of Canada that way.
Yeah, that's for sure. One of the best stories is RCAF flyer. He's patrolling the English Channel and he's listening to Foster Hewitt on the radio, and it's nighttime, and he's really taken back. He thinks he's back at home listening to the Foster Hewitt in the Leaf game, and Messerschmitt comes by, and then he wakes up. He says, "Well, no, I better back to reality here."
This Messerschmitt is probably not listening to the same game as me.
No,
Probably not. Probably, if anything, he'd be a Montreal Canadiens fan.
Yeah. If anything, right? So, film is in three parts. First, period one, the birth of Leafs Nation. Period two, the glory years. And we just saw some of the viz from their last Stanley Cup win in 1967, which would be part of the glory years, of course. And Brian McFarland covered that last Stanley Cup win by the Leafs, and he ended up at a Stanley Cup party that night, and that's part of the film as well. So, Vic, if we can roll that.
I did the 67 Leaf game, and my wife and I crashed the party. We weren't invited, but we went to Stafford Smythe's house and crashed the party and sipped champagne from the cup and went home. Nothing like that ever happened again. In Montreal, it happened every year, it seemed.
Yeah. So hard to believe, for people who have supported the Leafs all this time, and hard to believe that was going to be, the way things were, and hard to believe that was going to be the last time we celebrate a Stanley Cup for a long period of time, and who knows how long, really, right?
Yeah.
At that time, it sounds like he really didn't see it coming. Nobody did, right? Because at least we used to win them with regularity.
Yeah, they were getting older.
And Ron Ellis, who we interviewed as well, said that when he came in, they were winning Stanley Cups, and he was a rookie, and he was young, and they were still winning, and he thought that's how it always would be. And he didn't know at the time that he would be in for a career filled with heartache playing for the Leafs.
Go ahead, Paul. You were going to say something as well.
Yeah, going back to that party, it was the last one before the team was broken up because of expansion, and you had people like Eddie Shack throwing Tim Horton into the pool, then Horton chasing him, and all kinds of fun stuff. And then the expansion draft came, and then the team wasn't the same after that. And 67 was special, centennial year, and that clip you showed of that color footage of them at least winning the cup. That's amazing, because a fellow had his movie camera there at that game, and he filmed that, and it's ice level, and it's got shots that you would never have seen before. And we're going to be using that because he's given us permission. And putting it to music and everything is just a fantastic feeling, because you haven't seen these images in any of the films. I mean, the Stanley Cup game on TV exists, but this is a different angle and kind of nostalgic feeling. And like, I watched it at the time, but many people have no idea about Leafs winning Stanley Cup and what the effect it can have on the city. I can imagine what would happen if it happened again. And look at that color. People remembered black and white, but that's color film.
Well, I'm old enough that I do remember that. And, earlier you talked about Steve Ludzig, his favorite player being Johnny Bower. And those of us who met Johnny would right on board with that. What a special player he was. What a special guy he was. And just, just as real as you could possibly be, no matter what the situation was. Johnny was always Johnny, and an amazing individual. Um, uh, Robin Jones, I know, is a big supporter of this film, and Robin used to spend a lot of time, driving Johnny around and spending time with Johnny. Tell me about his contribution here. Dale, go
Well,
ahead.
Robin is extremely helpful. He's going to be on board in a number of different ways, and I believe that he's going to be one of our associate producers when it's all said and done. And he's also been helping us with some of the logistics of lining up some interviews with some of his great contacts. And of course, he's got some really great contacts through the hockey world and the NHL alumni. And he's also letting us use his digs for shooting interviews. And Robin, of course, being a huge Johnny Bauer person, has a wonderful collection of his own. And Robin's in the film too. It's important because Robin has his own great story to tell about being part of Leafs Nation, and it's important that we tell his story too. And we're hoping that we might even get to show part of this film with Robin as well. So he's a great guy, and we're really happy to have him on board.
Right,
Yeah,
and Paul, tell us a little bit about Johnny too, and what
Johnny
you
Bauer.
remember about Johnny. Yes.
Oh, geez, I'd known Johnny for, I guess, many years. The first time is he called me, and I didn't even expect it. And he says, and I didn't know who it was. He says, "Well, it's the greatest goaltender Leafs ever had." I said, "Oh, Johnny Bauer." So we've done the whole family, met the wwere part of the Johnny Bauer Foundation. That we have a dinner every year. Um, like I said, I've known them for many years, and the funniest guy. I remember going to Johnny's house and watching some video, and that laugh of his was just unbelievable. And we really miss him. And he was the most beloved Maple Leaf, I would think. And we just lost Nancy a little while back as well,
Mm-hmm.
and the two of them together were so funny and really true Maple Leaf. Same with George Armstrong. And funny, all these players I idolized in the '60s, I got to be friends with them later on and into their homes and everything. And kind of a great for a Leaf fan like myself to be able to get more stories from them. And the stories they tell you probably can't put on the air, or they haven't told anybody else. And I just love it.
There's going to be a lot of stuff in here, isn't there? Like that nobody has ever seen before. Interviews. Yeah, I know you guys have done just a multitude of interviews. Dale, you've talked to just about everybody, and I can imagine. And tell me about some of the other gems that you pulled out of, in terms of from the interviewer standpoint.
Well, as you said, we've talked to a lot of people. Uh, one of my favorites interviews was probably Rick Vive. I've interviewed him before, and he's just when you grow up watching someone like that, it's always a pleasure and a treat to interview someone like him. Another great interview was Nick Antropoff, and to get to talk to
Mm-hmm.
him. And he's sort of we get to go back and talk to people like Bob Vaughn and Ron Ellis and people from an era before I was even born, never mind watching the Leafs. And then we get to bookend it with someone like Nick Antropoff, who comes in, and he comes in from Kazakhstan, and he has very limited understanding of what the NHL even is growing up. And his only association with the Leafs is watching clips that show up on Saturday morning in the wee hours of the morning from a highlight reel show. But he still talks about how special it is to put on that Leaf sweater, and how special it is to play. And at this point, he's playing at what was then the Air Canada Center, and he still says it's so incredibly special to play for this team. and so just to sit and talk with someone like that is really great. And then, like I said, to be able to go back and talk to someone like Bob Bond and Ron Ellis and get their stories and of course we got to talk with Dave Keon. And Dave Keon doesn't talk to a lot of people. And this is Paul deserves all the credit for lining this up. We got to talk to Dave Keon, and that scored a lot of bragging points with my dad because he didn't think we were going to get to Dave Keon. And Dave Keon talks about the how he was in awe of walking into Maple Leaf Gardens for the first time and seeing that building for the first time, because it's a building that he heard about. He listened to play-by-play, and it was almost a mythical building to him. And then when he walks into it, is a junior player, by the way, not as an NHL player, but as a junior player playing junior hockey in Toronto. It was almost a mythical building for him. That tells you how special the Leafs were to these guys.
Yeah, part three is the third period of the story is the circus comes to town, and what happened to Keon is a big part of that circus. When you think about the circus coming to town, Paul, what comes to mind for you?
Well, first of all, Harold Ballard running the team from prison in '71, and then all the stuff about losing players, and then the bag over Roger Nielsen's head that never happened but was a Ballard thing. All kinds of crazy stuff. And it affected the players and the management too. Like Rick Vive kept saying, oh, that team had all the parts to it. If only we added a couple of players, and that would never happen. And the draft picks were good. Jerry McNamara made great draft picks, but he couldn't get the coach he wanted. But people kept watching it, hoping that they would turn things around. And they did a couple of times. Late 70s, they had really good teams, but then they brought Punch Imlach back, and he dismantled the team. And you talk to players today, and they're still angry at that if they had a good core of players. And, so everything would go wrong, went wrong. I mean, even the Doug Gilmour being high stick by Gretzky and things like that, Leaf fans still remember that. I guess they always will. And, all kinds of crazy stuff, like the sweaters being thrown on the ice. Okay. And that was really bad, even bad for the league too. But, and then afterwards you get someone throwing waffles on the ice, and they figure that out, and it just never ends.
I always say the Leafs are like the Brooklyn Dodgers of hockey. They find new and interesting ways every year to break the hearts of their fans.
And because we came so close so many times back in the late 70s when they knocked off the Islanders. Of course, then they lost to a very good Montreal team, but they were close. They a couple of moves here or there, and it sounds like they had some people in place like Jim Gregory and even McNamara, and they're making some moves that made sense, but in comes Harold
they were close in the 90s and the early 2000s too. But between 92 and the lockout year, I think the only team that went to a conference final more than the Leafs were the Detroit Red Wings.
Right.
So, like, they were always knocking at the door, and they just couldn't put it together. And Brian McFarland had a great quote from our interview with him and said that when asked about, is this current team really good? And he said, they're very talented. He said, they may never win a Stanley Cup, and that's no knock against them. Just the fact is that it's just that hard to win a Stanley Cup. You need to have a lot of luck, and this team, this Leafs in general, but they just seem to not have luck when it comes to these things. Well, you need to get very lucky to win the Stanley Cup.
The Leafs turned it around.
You need to have a goaltender, but you also need to get really lucky.
Yeah, when Curtis Joseph was signed, that signaled something good because he was outstanding, and they didn't go all the way, but they came pretty close. And you just need that top-notch goaltending even today.
conference final is
Right.
nothing to sneeze at. Like, you know, I know that
Leaf fans would take
it's
that.
not winning, but not winning at all. But there are a lot of markets, a lot of sports which the fans would kill to make a conference final.
Right. Well, we touched on the last time, the last couple of times, but the early 2000s they got to the conference finals again. But in '93, that was the year that Doug Gilmour, took the high stick from Gretzky, but there's no call. But Gretzky, of course, Dougie's also interviewed in the film, and this is what Killer had to say about his idol as he was growing up as a Leafs fan.
My kind of affiliation with the Leafs was Daryl Sittler, because he played in London with David at the time, and I believe I was like 4 or 5 years old, so had the opportunity to watch Daryl, and then every Saturday night you'd be at home, and all the family from your hockey parents and your buddies would all get together, and you'd sit up and watch Hockey Night in Canada. So that was I was really kind of watching Daryl a lot because the connection with my brother.
Right, his brother played with Daryl for a while, and that's a pretty cool affiliation. And then a few years later, he becomes the star of the show as the Leafs get so close. And you talked about Cujo, and then Eddie Belfour came along, and he helped the Leafs to make a bit of a run too. And it's like they've been so close. And when you make comparisons to maybe '93, and then again, I think it was 2003, or was it 2004 when they lost to Carolina? Anyway, it was like, and then you look at last year's team, and they seem to have the pieces. You know what I mean? They seem to have the pieces. They finished first in that, the rejig division, the Canadian division, and everything seemed to be falling into place. And then John Tavares takes a knee in the head from Corey Perry, and everything changes in a millisecond. And you need goaltending, you need luck, and when things come together for teams, it all comes together. But it seems to be like when it comes to the Leafs, fans, I guess their fans are split. There's some fans who think that the Leafs could win it every year. Then there are the other fans that seem to be, I don't even know if they're really Leaf fans, but they're Leaf fan agitators anyway. They'll say things like, the Leafs are never gonna win. Now this happens every year. It's always something. Yada 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 yada. But you know what? Every one of those teams that's won the cup in the last little while is, like take St. Louis. Like, how long did they go without winning a cup? And they had lots of opportunities, right? And just things have to fall into place in the right way for it to come together. I mean, you got to have talent, obviously, and you got to have the right pieces, but you also have to have that luck, and you have to get the goaltender who's hot at the right time.
Yeah,
Washington is another example.
Yeah. If the Leafs had got past the first round, who knows what would have happened in any of those years? That was they were leading Boston, and one of the problems is there's teams like Tampa Bay who are so good. It's not the Leafs aren't good enough, but there's some teams, even Florida this year, they have everything they need to win a cup, and can at least match that. They have the players, but do they have the luck?
I mean, it's not like we're Edmonton Oilers fans. That could be a lot worse.
Well, right now, yeah, but the Oilers have had a lot of success, and then a little more recently than the Leafs have, and so they got something to draw on. But it's good. Like I don't believe in jinxes, because jinxes are BS. Because look at the Red Sox, look at the Cubs, look at the Blues. I mean, jinxes in my mind don't exist. Things have to happen, things have to fall in place. You have to get hot at the right time. And what do you think about this, Lisa? The current version of the Maple Leafs? Do you think this team has what it takes to maybe go all the way? So are you, Dale?
I think they're extremely well coached. I think that the coach they have doesn't get nearly as much credit as he should. I think he's done an incredible job under less than ideal circumstances, for one. And I also think they've got an incredible amount of talent. And I know this is an unpopular opinion among a lot of people, but I think they've got a really good GM. I think that what they do well is they draft for talent, and then they trade for the spare parts they need. They trade for the grit and the third line and fourth line players. Um, do they have the heart that they need? I don't know. That's something that you have that as a player or you don't. No amount of coaching is going to give you that heart to block a shot, and when you know that puck's coming at you at 100 miles an hour or whatever, or go in and take a hit. But my thinking is that they if they can slay the demon of winning a round, then watch out.
Mm-hmm. Paul?
Yeah, I agree. Get past the first round and see what can happen. Although it does get tougher after that. I think they learned a lesson from last year. The players that were played last year and still with the team this year, they don't want to go through it again. That was a tragedy. Up 3-1, losing to your rival, and so I think that's a good lesson learned for them. But do they have enough to win the cup? Well, if the goaltending's hot, they don't get injuries. They need depth on defense, that's for sure. And people like Matthews and Marner, they have to really perform in the playoffs. Last year, losing Tavares, yeah, that was a tough thing, and they just couldn't make it up.
Well, the teams.
My daughter started cheering for the Leafs last year. I thought I'd spared my kids of the trauma and the therapy bills of being Leafs fans. But by getting them into other sports when they were kids, track and field, basketball, that sort of thing. But my daughter goes off to college last year, first year college, and she becomes a Leafs fan because the roommates are at like the campus types in residence and stuff. They're all cheering for the Leafs and watching hockey. And it's a pandemic. There's not much else to do except watch hockey. So she becomes a Leafs fan. And by the spring, she's in her apartment. And so she's all excited, invites me to come watch the playoffs with her. We watched the first game against Montreal. Things were going great. And then that knee on the head of Tavares. And she looks at me, and I swear to God, it took one season for her to become a fatalistic Leafs fan. She looks at me and says, "That's it. It's over." You poor kid. Like, you've been a Leafs fan for less than a whole year, and you've already turned into one of these Leafs fans. She looks at me and says, "It's over. They're done."
She was right.
She was right.
Well, yeah. How many of us listen? How many of us went watching that game when that happened to Tavares thought exactly the same thing? Oh my God, Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
My wife Penny Claire has become a big Leafs fan too. We watch every game together, and we record every game and watch them together, and it's like, it's fun. I mean, regardless of what happens, it's fun watching them do what they do, and then whatever happens.
They go up 3-1, and she's walking around she's grumbling. They haven't won nothing yet. They haven't won anything yet. You got to win 4. I'm thinking, how much time are you spending down at the bar? Like, are you studying, or are you just down at the bar, like lifting a pint with the construction workers and stuff?
Yeah, they got to win 4. You got to tell the Leafs that.
It happened to the
3 every year.
It happened to the Islanders. It happened to the Islanders.
Yeah.
It happened to the Red Wings. It happened to the Bruins. Right? Hey, remember when the Bruins were up 3-0 against Philadelphia and lost that series? Then the next year they came back and won it all. And that's something that Leaf fans can hang their hats on, to know that this is the type of thing that builds character in a team. You hate to have to go through it, but I'm telling you, there's nothing that builds character more than facing those losses and seeing that other team celebrate on the other side and the other bench, and skating around with the joy that they do. And so that is a part of it for sure. Paul, you're involved with another project that we see every week called Hockey Time Machine. Tell us a little bit about the Hockey Time Machine and what's coming up on the show.
Well, we started that when the pandemic started because we couldn't do our monthly alumni lunches. So we just wanted to keep everything together. But, when you're connected in the hockey world, it seems things get bigger it got really big now. It's called Hockey Time Machine. Every Thursday night, it's on YouTube. We have a Zoom afterwards so people can interact with each other. We've had all kinds of great guests. One of the best shows is having 6 Montreal Canadian Hall of Famers from the 70s on. We've had all kinds of different topics. We've done over, 70, 80 shows now, and every topic's different. And this week we're going to do the New York Islanders because it's timely with the unfortunate passing of Clark Gillies. And we're going to be we did one on the WHA reunion coming up. We've done a number of things on the 72 50th anniversary coming up. We're going to do a lot more on that. That's going to be a big, big deal. We're involved in the documentary and a book in that project, and other things as well. So we're bringing all kinds of people in, the people that you wouldn't normally be interviewed. And Scotty Bowman's been, a great help, and he's been a guest many times. And we're just having fun with it. And if anybody has any suggestions, and just let us know, and we'll try to get the players and do a theme on that particular show.
Well, it's a great show. I loved it last week. I caught a lot of the WHA stuff. It was funny, seeing Peter Young on there and talking about some of the behind the scenes stuff with the Jets, and it was a lot of fun. It's a great show. And once again, this project is Being Leafs Nation, film in 3 periods. I can't wait to see it. I mean, there's look at just from what you guys have shown me, what we talked about. There's some absolutely stunning, amazing stuff in here, and I mean, if you're a Leafs fan, you got to see this. There we are, the Warriors, right? And it's fantastic that you guys put this project together. And I can't think of two guys who would be better at doing this than Paul Patskou and Dale Morrisey. Leaf fans, dedicated historians, guys who've been around the block, filmmaker, and the best archivist in the business, and this is gonna be a lot of fun, and I can't wait to see it.
I've been around the block. Oh, now I'm sounding old.
Well, and when it comes to documentary filmmaking, my friend, you've been around the block, and that's what happens. You do these things a few times, and you get to be around. You've been around the block. I'm not saying you're old. I'm just saying you've been around the block. All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
And Paul, you're like me. You are a little bit older. You definitely been around the block, but sometimes you need that experience to pass on, right?
I've worked on a few films, maybe about 50 by now, and about 50 hockey books, and mostly Leaf stuff. And we did the Classic Games for Leafs TV. I was their historical consultant, and that was a lot of fun. We got to meet a lot of players, and it's the things they tell you off air that are more interesting than on air. And we kept all that information, and even getting to know the players, outside of the game, getting to hear their stories. And the internet has connected a lot of us. It has its,
and that's one of the great things too about, I think, this line of work is the longer you do it, the smaller your world gets. You find that you know people more and more, and that you bump into people a lot. You're like, and realize that you've worked on something with them, or you've interviewed them, or and then and in a strange way they remember you, which is kind of a little unsettling sometimes, in a good way, I think. But it makes you a little off balance sometimes. Like you run into someone at another event or something, and they come up to you and want to start talking to you, and you realize, yeah, but you're like a famous hockey player. Why are you talking to me? You should be, And so it's fun. It's neat. So.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. I remember the first time I was just a rookie reporter in Toronto, and I'm under the the bowels of Exhibition Stadium before the Jays and playing the Royals in the '85 ALCS, and I run into John Candy, and I go around my cameraman. We run over. John, my name's Joe Tilley. I'm a reporter. Joe, I watch all the time. Joe, I know who you are. Yeah. Well, I mean, what a rush! What a rush that was for me to be in that situation. It's such a cool thing, and you just never know that we do have our little niche here, and it's kind of fun when we get recognized in that way. And it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, guys, listen. I want to thank you for being on the show to talk about the film, and we're looking forward to the release, which will be, as you mentioned, Dale, in the fall, and I'm sure we'll be putting in some plugs for you guys from time to time to promote it. And if you want to tune into Hockey Time Machine, I'm sure Paul will get a chance to keep us updated as well. Thanks for everything. And listen, as guests on Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show, we're going to hook you up with our pal Jeff at Classic Imports. He's got some great Italian threads for you, make you look real good for the what do they call the red carpet for the the big promotional.
The
What do we
premier.
call that? Premier. There we go. Thank you.
It'd be a Robin Jones play probably. Robin has the unbelievable man cave and his perfect setting.
You're right.
Might
Yeah.
probably do a premiere there.
Definitely have the premiere at the man cave. There's no better place for it than that, for sure. All right, guys, thanks for being on the show, and we got lots more sports coming up.
Guests on Joe Tilley Sports receive a gift certificate from Classica Imports. Top of the line imported men's clothing. Check out the Classica Essential Collection now. Go to shopclassica.com.
Hey, I'm Canadian rocker Tommy Gunn, and you got more Joe Tilley Sports coming up.
When I'm working out, I like to wear my Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show t-shirt. It makes me feel handsome and strong. If you want a t-shirt, support the show, click on the link below. Now, back to my workout. 1,761, 1,762, 1,763, 1,764. Addiction Rehab Toronto, Toronto's #1 alcohol and drug treatment center, saving lives, reuniting families. The only treatment center in the province to offer medical detox, treatment, sober living, and lifetime aftercare all in one place. Our unique and specialized programs are designed to equip our clients with the tools to successfully lead a life of dignity, respect, and purpose. Let us help save your life or your loved one's life. Call today for more information or to facilitate an intervention. 1-855-787-2424 or visit addictionrehabtoronto.ca. Joe Tilley Sports is brought to you by COSA, Central Ontario Standardbred Association, providing a united voice for harness horse people racing at Ontario tracks. Check out your benefits today at COSAonline.com and check out COSA TV on Facebook and YouTube for all the latest harness news and live action updates. Live racing year-round. Go to hpibet.com for all your wagering options. Become a member today and your first bet is free. That's hpibet.com.
Do you know why that happened? You didn't fix your ball mark. The birds around here are very protective of the course, and when people don't take care of it, this is what happens. It's pretty simple. Just find your mark, fix it, and at least one other. Hey, look at the bright side. We're not up on the northern course. They've got bears and moose.
ShopClubLink.ca, golf equipment, demo clubs and trade-ins, golf apparel, custom fittings, accessories, all at your fingertips. ShopClubLink.ca.
Yeah, it's time for my COSA Swiss pick of the week. Last week, I decided to try a long shot in the opening leg of the Blizzard Series for fillies and mares. Katie's delighted 27-1, the number 6 horse. For a while, it looked like she might get the job done, but she ran into some traffic issues at the top of the stretch. Into the Mystic Moon with Louis Philippe Bois. Wasn't going to get caught anyway. Winning at 5-1 for trainer Wayne Dunn and owner breeder Stephen Upson. The 9-1 exact returned $328. This week, I'm going to take the 4-horse Rhythm Sealster in Thursday night's 5th race at Mohawk. It's a pop-up final for fillies and mares. And why don't we go with a little exacta here, a $1 exacta box, 2, 4, and 5. My bankroll has slipped back to $113. For all the racing updates, visit Costa TV on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Go to hpibet.com for all your wagering options and check out the stakes schedule. Tom Rapp, sports news that's close to home. Well, it was another major step up for Denis Shapovalov, fresh after helping leading Canada to the ATP Cup Championship. The 22-year-old Toronto lefty, he knocked off the number 3 player in the world in Alexander Zverev of Germany to reach the quarterfinals of the Australian Open. Now, Shapo, who's seeded 14th, won this match 6-3, 7-6, 6-3 to set up that date with the legend Rafael Nadal. Unfortunately, despite an epic 5-set battle, Shapo fell to Nadal. The Canadian felt that his Spanish opponent got some favorable calls in this match, and he probably did. That's the way it works once in a while, and these veterans get the calls that they probably don't really need. But Denis will be back. Losing in 5 sets to Nadal is no small feat. And how about Felix Auger-Aliassime taking care of the veteran Milan Cilic in 4 sets? That's 2 Canadians making it to the final 8 in Melbourne. We got some game in this game, and this is good. Well, for some reason, it seemed worse than it was. Might have had something to do with a couple of those blown leads, but the Maple Leafs had a reasonably successful road trip, all things considered. 3 wins, 2 losses, and an overtime loss. Peter Mrazek gave the Buds a solid start between the pipes, a 25-save effort. Jack Campbell, yeah, he could use a break now and again. Morgan Riley was rock on defense and added a goal and an assist to spark the offense. 3 of the Leafs' next 5 games are at home. The Bruins are stinking hot, creeping up, although they did lose the other day. They've got 2 games left with the Bees. It is going to be a fun ride. Well, the Raptors wrapped up their 5-game road swing with a big win in Washington. It's a game that was significant when it comes to the standings and could be crucial when we look at this down at the end of the regular season. Scotty Barnes with a career-high 27 points to lead the Dinos. Fred VanVleet with a triple-double. The triple-eight to seal the deal. The Raps went 2 for 5 on the trip. Then a couple of home dates, well, including that loss to the Blazers, even though they rallied from 30 down to make this game interesting. But they did lose to the Blazers. It was a disappointment. Now it's back on the road for 3 more tough games. It's going to be a tough month for the Rat Pack. Brooke Henderson gave it a shot, but came out just a little bit short in her bid for her 16th professional win in golf. The 24-year-old from Smiths Falls finished second at the Hilton Grand Vacations Tournament of Champions at Orlando. Daniel King won the event. Meanwhile, the golf has been absolutely sensational here at El Tigre in Nuevo Vallarta, Mexico. Penny Claire with a tee shot on 14 to set up another birdie. 2 on the back 9. Go figure.
Penny Claire never had an ace at this particular hole before, but this is going to be close. All right, pin high. Woohoo! Today's environmental tip: avoid using bottled water. Yes, the process of manufacturing water bottles contributes to water shortages. It takes more water to produce a plastic water bottle than there is water inside the bottle. Transporting bottled water creates more greenhouse gases. It takes over 1,000 years for plastic water bottles to decompose, and the process leaks harmful chemicals into the soil.
Rycom, passionate people who turn complicated business problems into simplified technology solutions. For public and private sector real estate, properties, portfolios, and enterprise customers. Optimize and future-proof smart buildings from the ground up. Smart Tech Solutions, the latest in fault locating, base building network design, managed services, cybersecurity, data analytics. Our fault detection will support all smart strategies, define projected outcomes for capital planning, and reduce environmental impact. Rycom, smart protection solutions. At Rycom, we're building a path to a smart and environmentally friendly future and a carbon-free economy.
And we want to thank all the folks who make this show possible. These are friends, trusted business associates, and all-around great folks. We highly recommend them all. Reminder, the show is available on Spotify, iTunes, Breaker, Radio Public, Google Podcast, and Pocket Cast, as well as the Spanglish Network and Zingo TV. Also, like and subscribe to the show on YouTube. Go to YouTube for all the past, current episodes of Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show. Thanks once again to Dale Morrisey and Paul Patskou for being on the show. We want to thank you for watching, and join us next week when racing legend Ron Waples drops by. We'll see you then. Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show is brought to you by
Brian Gribben Insurance Planning, helping you solidify your financial future.
At BGIP, what we do that's unique in the marketplace is we show people how to spend and enjoy their money in their early years of retirement without the fear of running out. Also, we're able to do this without you having to change financial advisors. Please look us up at bgip.ca today, and let's book a 30-minute phone call to see how we can bring value to you and your family in your planning.
Call Brian today for all your retirement needs. We did. 905-686-5678. Brought to you by MNP, a leading Canadian national accounting, tax, and business consulting firm. MNP proudly serves and responds to the needs of our clients in the private, public, and non-for-profit sectors. Through partner-led engagements, MNP provides a collaborative, cost-effective approach to doing business and personalized strategies to help people and organizations succeed across the country and around the world. With local offices in Oshawa, Toronto, Mississauga, Burlington, and more, our team is here to support you. Visit mnp.ca to learn more. Hi, I'm Joe Tilley, and I want to tell you about the painting pros. Patrick and his crew recently came into my home, and they painted the walls, they added some color. It's fantastic, and I can't be more satisfied with the work they did. That crew is tremendous. They were professional, they were courteous, they were respectful, and they did a fantastic job. Look at that. Look at that color. I just can't stress enough how satisfied we truly are with Patrick and his crew. For all your painting needs, go with the pros.